Give him.
Alistair.
Chair, I would primarily focus on new clause 8 in my name and that of colleagues. This bill, first and foremost, and it's self-evident in clause 2, is about perfecting the decolonisation of the British Indian overseas territories. But it is doing it in a way which ignores a primary component of decolonisation. We subscribe to United Nations Resolution 1514. And that resolution not just talks about respecting the integrity of territory, it also talks about respecting self-determination. Now, we're dealing with a situation where the British Indian overseas territories have existed de facto and de jure for over 50 years. And yet, the approach of the government to justify this completion of decolonisation is to focus solely on the territorial integrity by claiming that the Chagos Islands are in fact part of Mauritius. The resolution 1514 has a number of components, and it says in the first point, it deals with the subjection of peoples to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. But then in the second point it says this: all peoples have the right to self-determination. Now the question for this House is surely this: are the Chagossians a people? I certainly think they are. They are distinct from the Mauritians by their ethnic background, by their religion, by geography. Mauritius and the Chagos Islands are over 1,300 miles apart, approximately as far as it is from this House to North Africa. So when it comes to discussing and thinking about the issue of territorial integrity, it really is a stretch, after 50 years of the existence of the BIOT, to say that the sole defining issue is that of territorial integrity. And in saying that, to ignore the right to self-determination. Now, this nation has dealt with decolonisation before, and we didn't approach it on the basis that it's only about territorial integrity. Take India. We decolonised in India, but we allowed it to be subject to self-determination. That's why we have India, we have Pakistan, we have Bangladesh. So it is quite clear that it is not a situation where territorial integrity trumps everything else. It does not trump self-determination. Indeed, on the experience of decolonisation, such as in India, it is itself secondary to self-determination. And yet that is the one thing which has been utterly ignored in this process: the right of the people who claim the Chagos Islands as their homeland to any say of self-determination. We have in our history the shameful episode of their forceful removal from the Chagos Islands. And now, under this treaty, we're going to compound it by legitimising it. Because it is by legitimising their forceful removal from the Chagos Islands that we say it is only about territorial integrity. That is how we get round the question of self-determination. That is wrong, Madam Chair. The people of the Chagos Islands are a people. They are a people with a homeland. They are a people, therefore, in international law with a right to self-determination. So why does this treaty, why does this bill trash that right of the people of the Chagos Islands? That is the fundamental haunting question when it comes to the humanity of this, and indeed the international legal requirements of this situation, which prevails. Now, the government are obviously holding to the line, oh, it's only about territorial integrity. But they're then hoisted on their own petard, because they at one point say that, and then they recognise the Chagossians as a people by setting aside some millions of pounds for them. You cannot say that it is only about territorial integrity. There is no people to whom to give the right to self-determination, and then to say, but for those people to whom we deny the right to self-determination, here's some conscience money. We cannot do that. And yet that is what this treaty does. And of course, it was the BIOT that recognised the separateness of the people of the Chagos Islands. And even the much vaunted advisory judgment of the International Court gives respect and acknowledgement to an extent to the question of self-determination. At one point in the judgment, it says this: it follows that any detachment by the administrating power of part of a non-self-governing territory, unless based on freely expressed and genuine will of the people of the territory concerned, is contrary to the right to self-determination. So even that advisory judgment recognised the exemption, the exception of a freely expressed and genuine will of the people. But that is what we have not had on this issue. That is what this government has gone out of its way to deny: the free and genuine expression of opinion by the people whose homeland is the Chagos Islands. And that is a shameful indictment that compounds what we did to those people in the end of the 1960s, to now totally dehumanise their human rights by saying you have no rights whatsoever when it comes to self-determination. That, I believe, is fundamentally wrong. And if the splitting of that wider colony in 1965 was illegitimate because there was no self-determination, according to the advisory judgment of the court, then equally the Chagos Islands rejoining Mauritius without self-determination is illegitimate. You cannot have it both ways. And that is what this bill is seeking to do. It is saying, oh, because it was illegitimate to split the Chagos Islands off from Mauritius in 1965 because there was no self-determination, then it's territorial integrity only. But equally, if the basis of rejoining the Chagos Islands to Mauritius is without self-determination, then that equally is illegitimate. And those are some of the points that this government has not faced, and if it has faced them, has not answered, and which this House legitimately tonight is asking and waiting for answers. And answers which, if they do not come, illustrate that this is a tawdry, unacceptable, unenforceable bill, as it will ultimately, I believe, be seen to be.